welcome to The Financial Operator. I am here today with Jeff Price. And Jeff, I'm going to let you do your introduction and tell me all about you and your business, but let's let it go. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, Jen. Appreciate it. So kind of my background, I'm in audio, video, and IT industry. Kind of the running joke in our industry is we eventually all had to get real jobs. So my background was originally I was a musician and recording engineer. Did that for a long time, for several years. And like I said, the running joke is all of us kind of have that background in the AV world for the most part. And eventually, one day had to, get more consistent, better jobs, all that fun stuff. So
yeah, regular pay, things like that.
Yeah. Consistent, being able to, do all the stuff. So, but yeah, so got into the audio video industry, about probably 20 years ago, and have been doing it, ever since then. The company that I own currently, Communications Advisory Service, we do audio, video, and IT, design, installation, support, across multiple different sectors. We do a lot of stuff in oil and gas and education, healthcare, those kind of things. We've spent quite a bit of time, building some specific systems that we use to make sure that we're meeting clients' requirements, making sure that, that their technology is working for them, that it's not working against them. That's one of the things that we really spend a lot of time on, because we find a lot of time if you're not fully understanding what somebody needs on the front end, you're building a system that may not actually work for them on the back end, as they're doing things, that kind of stuff. So we spend a lot of time.
Tell me in layman's terms, like what you're building for a client.
Yeah, so it could be anything from a conference room, like a video conferencing system. So if you have multiple conference rooms and you've got a lot of people in your organization that are remote, or you're doing a lot of remote meetings and those kind of things, we'll set up conference room systems for that. And make sure that those systems do, whatever that particular client is needing them to do. But we also do a lot of digital signage, so large format video walls. We do a lot of distributed audio systems. We've started to get into some stadium audio systems, so large format PA address for, whatever the need is, right? And so we've spent a lot of time, myself and the team, we all kind of come from various backgrounds within either house of worship and church organizations, or also corporate organizations and commercial organizations. And so we kind of run the gamut across all of those things. If that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Well, that's very helpful for both me and the listeners, hopefully, because sometimes I think we talk in broad terms and I'm like, tell me what that actually means. Yeah. So you got into this business about 20 years ago, but now you own the business. I'm assuming you didn't start off owning a business.
No, that is correct. And I've the company that I own today, I've only currently worked with for the last about 10 years. My previous work history was I worked for the original office music and restaurant music company, Muzak. So whenever anybody talks about elevator music or those kind of things, which I didn't realize until I actually started working for them. That company started in like 1933 or somewhere in there. It's like 1920s, 1930s. Yeah. So, but yeah, did that for about 8 years. Also did some, audio recording, audio engineering, played music professionally for a while, did that as well. And then, like I said, started with this company about 10 years ago. And over the years, kind of built a book of business. And the previous owner came to me at one point and asked me if I'd like to take over the company because he was ready to retire and move on. So kind of just slid in and, we've picked it up and moved on with it. So
okay, so kind of a gradual takeover. When did you officially take the reins?
September of 24 of last year.
Okay, so congratulations on your 1 year anniversary.
Yeah, just about a year and a month. So.
Yeah. Time flies, right?
It does, very much so. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, were you already part of the C-suite, we'll call it, or did you kind of work your way up into that management role? How did you end up in this position? Yeah, so when I started with the company, I started in a support role at one of our client locations, and spent the next 4 years there doing that pretty much full time. That was my main job.
over that time, we had gone from basically it being just me working for that client to then building a team of 12 people that worked for that client, supporting their day-to-day operations, those kind of things. And then somewhere along the way, the previous owner kind of came to me and said, hey, you've kind of built all of this in the background, or all of these things are happening. Would love to have you start doing more on the company side and, start trying to build more business and some of those kind of things. And so at that point, I was kind of put into a vice president role, or, for lack of a better term, an operations role, and really kind of built, a really decent book of business from a support standpoint, with a few different clients. And then over the time, when he came to me and said, hey, I'm getting ready to retire. I want to get out of this. Do you want to pick this up and run with it? Then we started to really kind of think about the business model moving forward, and we started moving into the integration side, which we hadn't historically done up to that point. That was about 2022, something like that. Okay. And then since it's actually 2021 and then into 22. And since then, we've kind of really leaned into the integration and support model. And the business has grown pretty substantially over that time.
Okay. So you had a couple of years kind of heads up before you were the one taking over the reins.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to us? This is always an interesting topic for me, as that transition time. How did you structure that? How did you make sure that you were ready to take the reins? Give me the details.
So I'll just give you some context and some history as far as I go. I never really had it in my thought process, one day I'm going to take over the company, or, I'm going to work up through this thing and do this. It was always somebody else on the outside kind of coming and saying, hey, you're really good at this. You should, really think about this. Do you want to potentially pick this up and run with it? And over the years, I think it was just kind of building skills, right? Mm-hmm. So, start off in a support role with a client, you kind of understand what it takes to work with a client and build through all the things that you need to do to support that client. Once you've done that with, a larger organization, it starts to become a little bit easier to say, okay, what worked really, really well in this scenario, and how can I apply that to any other customer experience or customer relationship, right? And that's kind of what I did over the years, was I focused on, what really works well. But at the same time, being in a support role with a large organization, you can find out really quickly what are the things that other companies are doing or other competitors are doing that don't work really well. So what are the things, is that whole inverse of if I want to be successful, what are the things that I don't need to do, right? You don't need to, whatever, you don't need to put off doing the work. You don't need to put things aside and not pay attention to things or whatever. You really need to focus in and have a plan and move forward and that kind of deal. So, it made it really easy to start thinking about, from a company standpoint, what do I want to do with the company, or where do I want to take the company? Because I knew what really bad looked like. I knew what, having lived in that support role and worked with other organizations, it's I don't want to do business like this. I don't want to do business like that. These are things that I don't want to do. So let's do the opposite of that and kind of see how that goes. That worked out really well. It gave us a lot of really good context, and we've gotten some really great feedback from clients on that side of it. But as far as the takeover and the transition, building kind of the skills in there to do that, being able to see some of those things, ask some of those questions, that's really kind of what started to shift my mindset around, basically being able to run the company, getting to a place where, these things make sense. And for me, that took a few years. I was in the number 2 position at the company for probably the better part of 5 years, before I really started making, substantial decisions. And then during the last about a year and a half before I fully bought the company, for the most part, I was making 95% of the decisions by myself. Mm-hmm. And so I had a lot of really good runway, and, really credit the previous owner for giving me that experience and the time to really kind of wrap my arms around a lot of that stuff. And there's still stuff that, you if you are convinced that you know everything, you need to go back and reassess, because you probably don't, right? Mm-hmm. There's things that you've missed, or there's things that you need to go back and look at. But it definitely helped, in that first this last first year of fully owning the company, of like just kind of having a mindset of like, hey, kind of done some of these things already. There's some things that I don't know, but I'm going to reach out to the people that I know can help me, and we'll go from there.
Well, that was great that you had a couple of years too, where you may have been the one that was kind of making the decisions, but you had somebody else to run them by, I assume, and just, kind of work with the previous owner to make sure everything is still going in the right direction. Yeah.
And it's, there are some takeaways from that I've noticed over the last year. Our business model, when I started working with the company, and our business model now, as far as the type of work that we go after and the type of work that we do, all of that has kind of drastically changed. We still do a lot of the support and a lot of the things that we originally did, but it's not the main bulk of our business. The main bulk of our business is now design and integration, for new systems, which is a project-based deal. So how you manage those things is a lot different. How you plan for whether it's taxes or whether it's cash flow or, whatever's going on, like you have to spend more time, thinking about those things. And if it's, if you have a recurring support contract, those are relatively straightforward and easy because every month you have money coming in consistent, like what it's going to be. There's no guesswork. There's no, how do I increase business or how to do a better job on this? Like there are some things that you can work through there, but like when you're doing project-based work, you've really got to spend more time thinking through that and planning differently and, trying to make sure that you're covering all the bases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions that I asked you, was because you talked about making some changes, but it sounds like you changed the structure of the business and like the main pieces of the business pretty drastically from what you had been working with. So how did you make that decision? Like, why did you decide to go down that path?
So I was asked by a few different people, why are we, like, at the time we were doing very specific consulting work where we would decide like, hey, here's the standards of the equipment that need to be installed. Here's how it needs to be installed. And here's what needs to happen. Right. And we were very successful with a lot of that. And so we had a lot of people that would ask us, well, why aren't you guys actually doing integration? Because you're basically doing all of the pre-work, that goes into that. And then the execution is the only thing on the back end. I shied away from it for a long time because I felt like, for a long time there were, my experience with other companies that do what we do now, a lot of it felt like they were in it to sell as many boxes as possible. Mm-hmm. And it felt like certain systems were designed to have as many pieces of hardware and as many things that could, as many things as they could sell, basically. And at the end of the day, that really wasn't the model that we wanted to follow. And so I didn't want to get into the trap of, tying everything that we do to the margin that I make on selling a box, right? Like, yes, it's important to be profitable. Yes, it's important to make money. But at the end of the day, making sure that you're meeting the client's requirement and making sure that you're doing what they need you to do, is a far higher priority, or should be a far higher priority, than just meeting a quota of selling a certain number of boxes so that you make a certain dollar amount or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that everybody in our business is that way. And it can come across very cynical sometimes, talking through that. Mm-hmm. But, in my experience with that, I just did not want to fall into the trap of, feeling like we had to sell, a certain number of boxes and we had to do a certain number of things and we had to engineer systems in a certain way, so that we made the most of, whatever we were going to make from an equipment standpoint. So from that standpoint, I shied away from it for a long time. And then it started having some conversations with a few different people where it was like, hey, we don't have to do business that way. We can do business and focus on the requirement and focus on what's actually needed and not, make it something that it shouldn't be. Right. Mm-hmm. And so the focus, again, doing the inverse, of, if I know that this is what's happening in a lot of other organizations, how do I not do that? What are the things that I need to not do, to focus on, right? That kind of deal. And that's worked out really well for us. I mean, we grew in the first 2 years, or the first 3 years of doing that business model. We doubled in size every year. Over that, we're in a period now of kind of restructuring and setting up for scale and making sure we have the right systems and people in place, and so that we can continue that growth curve in the future, So.
Okay. So you mentioned a lot that you were like looking at what you don't want to do. Did you have any sort of vision or a company or mentor that was giving you like, this is the path that you should be following, or at least this is an idea of what you should be doing?
No, early on, I did not have that. Again, it was just kind of using the benchmark of this is not really good and this is not a good way to do this. So what is the opposite of this, and how do I chart that path differently, right? It's interesting to kind of get into the weeds of some of the things that we do in our industry, because there are some things in our industry that are absolutely definitely a need, right? So like we're having a conversation via camera and headset and video conferencing, and there's a whole ecosystem here that you're having to use to record, right? And so these things they're necessary for business, but there's a line between what's necessary for business and what's kind of the next level of like you're trying to show off something for a client because you've got a giant video wall in your lobby, and you want to show some really impressive content, and it's the marketing piece of check this out, this is really amazing. Like there's just some various levels to that, and what I found over the years, working with several other companies that do very similar things that we do, a lot of people focus on those things and kind of push that bigger piece of sales or bigger piece of like you've got to have these 12 boxes to do the same job that you could do with 3, right? And it's just finding kind of that middle road, or the best place to kind of bring those things together and meet the client's requirement, but without upselling and building a system that doesn't make sense and that's overly complicated and complex.
Yeah, so building it for what the client actually needs and what instead of what like would be really cool.
Correct. Yeah, and you can still do the really cool thing. I mean, we have that conversation with clients all the time. It's like, do you want this to function, or do you want this to be the shiny object of, hey, look what we did, look how cool this is, that kind of stuff. Because there's definitely a need for that, right? I mean, there's a whole marketing piece, there's a whole strategy behind some of those things that people do. And it makes sense, I mean, if you are trying to show that you are, the dominant player in a particular market, or you're, at a certain status or whatever, I mean, there are things that you can do to do that, but the whole thing is just identifying that requirement on the front end, right? And if that's really what you want to do, if you really want to make this the wow, like we are the best in this industry and this is why, and, all of those kind of things, as long as you identify that in the beginning, that's fine, because that's the requirement of the client, right? Again, it just goes back to identifying what is the root, like at the end, when this is all done, when we're finished and we walk away, what is going to make you the happiest and what is going to mean that we did our job correctly? Is it that your status level increases because you've installed a really impressive video wall that you can play really high resolution content on? If that's the case, phenomenal. We'll build that. We'll do that. No big deal. If your like perfect scenario is you have a conference room that works, that you just plug your laptop into and everything does what it needs to do and you don't have problems, that's the requirement. And so we'll build that, right? It's just really nailing down what the requirement is, at the end of the day. So,
Okay. So tell me about what mistakes you made in the last couple of years and what you would tell somebody else to try to avoid.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I actually had this conversation on a different podcast not too long ago. So we did a project. We were partnering with another company. The other company was the face to the end client. So we were supporting them, building a system for a larger install. By the time kind of everything happened the way that it should have, like we basically said, we're going to build a system that's capable of these things. Here's that requirement. We got about halfway through the kind of design phase at that point and realized there were some pretty critical components that had been missed because of conversations that we weren't involved in, right? Because the other partner was having those conversations on the front end, right? And so there were some key pieces of information that we didn't get. But at the end of the day, we basically said, hey, we're going to fulfill this, we're going to follow through, and we're going to deliver on what we said we're going to do, right? But we didn't have enough communication on the front end to really identify that whole requirement, right? So we've spent a lot more time, and that ended up, like, from a dollars and cents standpoint, that ended up costing us about $40,000 to fix and get it corrected, right? And so from a project standpoint, that's one of those significant mistakes that we've looked at, and we've said, okay, if we're going to do any more of these, like, we're going to ask more questions on the front end. We're going to try and be as involved as we can be on the front end. And always supporting, the other piece of this is always supporting the partner. Because if you've partnered with somebody on something, it's extremely important, to make sure that you maintain that partnership and you do it correctly, right? So you're never, like, throwing that individual or that company or organization under the bus, but at the same time, like, you're covering their bases, but you're also covering your own, and you're asking the appropriate questions to make sure that you've got all the information that you need before you actually lock into something. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you have any, okay, so that's a great customer example. Do you have any, like, due diligence type of question or type of things that you would have done differently when you knew you were buying the business?
Yes, looking back at that, one of the things that I would definitely say to anybody who is looking at buying a business, make sure that you are in fact buying a business. And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, if the person you are buying the business from has created a high paying job for themselves and everything is wrapped up in their knowledge and what they've done over the years and those kind of things, and they don't have systems or processes or any of those kind of things in place, you're not really buying a business. You're buying essentially a book of clients, but then you're going to have to go figure out your company policies, your structure, like all of these other things in the background. If that doesn't exist, you really need to spend some time reflecting on that, because it's going to take you a large amount of time and a large amount of investment, making sure that, you've got the right policies in place, you've got the right people in place. There are ways to do it, that it doesn't take nearly as long as it probably used to. And there's a lot of, additional resource out there. There's, there's so much information, on the internet now, that you can get and kind of go through training and, some of these other kind of things. But the bottom line, I guess what I'm getting at there is, if you're buying a business, make sure it's actually a business. Make sure that you've actually got, all of the different pieces of that. And so that you're having to walk in and, like, not build everything from the ground up. Now, granted, like, if you take over a business and the business is, let's say the business is 35 years old or 20 years old, and it's in a particular industry that's not sexy and not, whatever, chances are it has not been modernized and it doesn't have the latest up-to-date systems or the latest up-to-date, whatever the thing is. But if it has systems in place that are functioning and working, that at least will give you the time to wrap your head around what's actually happening in the business, and then how do you improve it by modernizing each portion of the business, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's your quoting or your accounting or your sales and marketing, whatever the thing is, right? If there's already existing systems, even if they're archaic, even if it's spreadsheets or even paper, right? But there is some kind of system in place. It's at least functional and it's at least working. If those things aren't in place, then you're going to have to spend a lot of time making a lot of those things and really, like, thinking through that. Excuse me. The advantage I had was, we spent the better part of a year, to a year and a half, really developing some of the systems that we've used even to today, with quoting or with, bidding jobs or getting in front of certain clients, that kind of thing. And so I spent a lot of time actually building that before I completely took over the business. But there are still a lot of pieces of that, that I probably would have changed a little bit differently if I had known that certain things weren't in place, for some of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how has your job changed, now that you're the owner? Yeah. How has it changed in the last year?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've spent a lot more time trying to delegate as much off of my plate as I can and support the rest of my team so that they can do their job effectively. And so, like, again, like, as I mentioned a minute ago, like, if you're a business owner or you're thinking about buying a business from somebody who basically is wearing all of the hats and is doing all of the jobs, again, you're not really buying a business, you're buying maybe a book of clients, but you're going to have to figure out, like, when that person leaves and they're no longer wearing all the hats, well, now who's wearing all the hats, right? And so for me, I've spent the last year really trying to think through, like, who are the right people on the team to pick up certain portions of, whether it's sales and marketing or operations or finance or all of those different types of things, right? What does that look like, and who do I need to have, in that seat, and how do I need to be delegating to those people and then also supporting them so that they're kind of driving their portion of the vision for the company, right? So, like, there's an overall vision for the company of, like, we want to be the best at this as possible. We want to support our clients, and we want to create an impact in our local community and with our customers. But at the same time, like, each member of your team is going to have to own a portion of that vision, and you need to be able to, like, very clearly tell them what that is, but then also support them in moving that forward, right? So I would say the changes for me over the last year has been really getting out of the day-to-day operations of the business and working on making sure the right people are in the right seats and making sure they're supported and have the tools that they need.
Mm-hmm. How have you prepped yourself to step into that leadership role? Because that's a totally different skill set than it is working somewhere.
Yeah. And it can be a painful transition as well, for sure. I have always been of the mind that we should all constantly be learning something. You should always be discovering whatever the new thing is that you want to put time and focus and effort and, whatever into, and spend time working on that thing. And, in some cases, spending a lot of time on it and mastering it to the best that you can. And so for me, it was really, like, when I started working for the company, the kind of short history on this was I went from being in a support role to then all of a sudden being in a management role, basically overnight. And so when I went back to work for this particular client, I had been working for this client previously. Before I started working with Cass, I had worked at this client site for 2 years before for a different company. When that wrapped up and I left because I could see kind of the writing on the wall that this contract was going to end and it was going to end badly and, things were not going to be good. I was just like, I'm going to get out of here before all of this, crashes to the ground, and I don't want to be a part of that. And so I left for about a year, and I got a call back from the client who said, hey, like, I want you to come back, because you were one of the better resources that we had. And you really kind of took ownership of, these areas and really moved things forward. Right. And so when they brought me back and I started working for Cass at that point, overnight I quadrupled my income. And so that one was a huge mind shift for me, because at the time I was going through, all of the different books, all the different stuff that I could think of. I was trying to better my own mindset. I was trying to better my own knowledge base and figure out, like, what do I need to do to be successful wherever I'm at. Right. So I spent a lot of time, I went through a lot of the Dave Ramsey books on financial management, financial peace, all those things. And then went through a lot of other, just general books, I think, that a lot of people have looked at. So the Think and Grow Rich, the, Millionaire Mindset, the Millionaire Next Door, all of these different things from a business standpoint of what can I do to better myself and better my situation. And then when that happened, and I started working for Cass at that point, it totally changed kind of my overall mindset of what was actually possible. Right. Mm-hmm. At that point, like, I had a minute to be able to stop and, like, look up and see, okay, the landscape, has definitely changed. Right. And to be completely, transparent, like, I mean, getting pulled into that position, I got pulled into that position because I did a good job before. Right. So you have to own where you're at, and you have to do a good job where you are. Right. To then get to a place where, like, you can step into those opportunities, when they're ready. Right. Mm-hmm. When those things happen. And so for me, like, that kind of really totally changed my mindset of what was possible, and really started to kind of think think in bigger terms, think in, terms of leading teams, because, I started, and within 6 months we started adding people on, and I went from it being me by myself to me plus 3 people, me plus 5 people, me plus 10 people, and really had to start thinking about like, okay, how do I manage, these people? And then how do I manage this overall, contract that we have, and what does all this look like? And so there's just a lot of time reflecting on that, a lot of time, spent learning things that I, didn't completely understand at the time, but like the more that I've, been involved in it, the more that it has definitely proven to help me. So. Mm-hmm.
So it's just that like, there's always a trigger. I feel like something happens that makes people realize they're going to have to grow.
Right.
And then it's just this, as you said, like this constant state of learning after that, like you never stop. But,
yeah. I mean, it's that consistency piece, everybody talks about like the whole hockey stick curve, right? But what nobody zooms in on or thinks about is like the 3 years before that you spent just consistently showing up every day, doing a good job, everything was great. And then all of a sudden everything takes off, right? Exactly. Not because that one day everything was perfect and so everything just shot through the roof, right? This is like the consistency of like building the habit, building the, I'm doing the job that I need to do, I'm doing the job that I was asked to do, those kind of things, and being consistent and delivering consistently. You eventually get to a point where that starts to compound, and when it compounds, it really takes off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's the same idea if we're using money as an example, right? Like when you're first starting to save, it's like I put $1 in. It takes a while to get to $2, and then all of a sudden you're at 100,000, and it's like, what? How did that happen? Yeah. But it was all those deposits, like day after day.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, it just, like you said, the hockey stick, it just starts to go up at a rate that seems impossible prior to. But it's a good example.
And I think it's the same. I think it's the same with skills. I think if you consistently add skills, you consistently spend time working on yourself, working on whatever the thing is that's in front of you, right? I mean, for me, like that was the whole thing of, it's funny. I had this conversation where, it's like, what goals did you have, and what were you really aiming for, and what was going on? And at the time, it's like I didn't have any of that. Like I wasn't thinking about a goal of, oh, I'm going to reach this pinnacle, or we're going to make this much money, or, like I didn't have any of that in my mindset at the time. My mindset at the time was I have to do a really good job right now because this is what matters today. Mm-hmm. Right. And if you do that long enough, like eventually you're going to get to a point where you can stop, breathe for a minute and say, okay, I've gotten here. How do I chart the course to where I really want to go? You're not going to get the opportunity to chart that course until you understand all of the other things and build the consistency and build the, that is as much of a muscle as anything else, is just doing the work, putting in the time, and mastering whatever the thing is that's in front of you, then stacking the skill and going on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. I use my example, and this is a personal thing for me too, where it's probably, 10, 15 years ago, even, like I did not know what my career path was going to be. I knew I didn't like the job that I was in, but I had no idea what it was that I was like meant to do. And I feel like people get caught up on that too, like this idea of this dream job or whatever it is. And anyway, so I also had my own, I used to be by myself in a truck all day, every day. And I would listen to Dave Ramsey. So a lot of that same books and stuff was on my list, but I knew I wanted to own a business. I had no idea what that business would be. He is very like pro business, as you probably know. And so it was like, got stuck in my head that that's what I was going to do one day. And so just day after day, I just started doing things that I thought a business owner would do. I started trying to meet people. I didn't even know why I was trying to meet people or like who I was trying to meet. But, networking and putting myself in positions where there would be more opportunities to come. And I think that's how, like, when people ask me how I got it, I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of like gradually started taking steps towards something that I didn't even know was there. And just day after day, making those choices to keep showing up and keep doing the things that I knew people were telling me that you do these things to get to be successful or get to be what you want. And here I am. So it's like a lot of those things when you go back and like, I will look at like my goals, and things like that I set 10 years ago. And I'm like, wow, I've accomplished a lot of those, even though I had no idea how that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, consistency. Yeah. It's a big fan of that. I am a big fan.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to me, like how many people think that even now, like that there's some secret magic formula of if I do these 5 things, 2 days from now, everything's going to be perfect and I'm going to make, $1 million and whatever. It's like, that doesn't exist. Right. Like even in the instances where people like seemingly have, made something like an overnight, success or whatever. It's like, Dave Ramsey talks about when they got featured on Oprah and, how they were thinking, oh, this is all gonna, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be what it's going to be. But like nobody pays attention to the 10 years before that you put in all the time, you put in all the effort, you wrote all the books, you did all the podcasts, whatever the thing is, right? Like there's an amount of time that you're going to have to put into something before you master it, before it becomes, that much bigger of a deal. I mean, another really good example of that is the CEO for Liquid Death did a whole lot of marketing, worked in marketing agencies, worked in all kinds of stuff, and then finally created Liquid Death, and it like blew up because of all of the cumulative effort and time and, the knowledge that he put together over the years of building other brands and building marketing strategies and all of those kind of things. But then it's like you finally have that one thing that pays off, that takes off in a way that you never expected. I love Alex Hormozi's example when he talks about the dice and whether your dice is 8-sided or whether it's 200-sided and there's only one green dot and the green dot means that you move forward. The bottom line is the more that you roll, the better the odds are that you're going to hit the green and you're going to move forward. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter like what your advantage is or what your disadvantage is or doesn't matter any of those things. Right. As long as you're consistently rolling, sooner or later, the law of probability is basically going to take over and you're going to hit one of the things that you do is going to be successful and it's going to move forward. You just have to be willing to go through the process of get up every day, do the thing, roll the dice, move forward, learn something new and just pick it up and do it every day. Mm-hmm. So
this is where I feel like social media these days is like both a blessing and a curse, right? And a lot of kids, I think, get caught up in this too because, and adults, honestly, that you watch like 22-year-olds that become millionaires and you're like, oh, well, if you're 40, you're too late, right? And on the other hand, it's like 18-year-olds have this unrealistic probably idea of what can happen when you're 22, like what the average life is. But I mean, if you go back to like when I think it's your 50s are like generally your most successful decade. So it's like a lot of time to put in before you hit that green dot, right? Like that thing that is the.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting, I mean, if you look at that in the perspective, I mean, I think it's like social media, YouTube, all those kind of things. Look at Mr. Beast as an example. Mr. Beast, I think, started posting on YouTube when he was like 12 years old and didn't really like take off until he was, I think, in his early 20s, or something like that. So
it's
right?
still a decade of.
So you still have, there's still a 10-year span of like putting the time in and doing stuff, whatever. And that's, I think, the thing that people get the most twisted is they think that you've got to have it all charted out and mapped out and, all of that kind of stuff. Bottom line is you don't. Like, I mean, to your point, like you were saying, I mean, you were doing stuff like not even knowing, like, why am I going to meet people? What am I even doing? Like that, it's the same kind of deal. Like you just got to be able to put in the work and put in the time. And sometimes you're not going to understand it. Sometimes you're not going to understand why you're doing a certain thing or why you feel like you need to do a certain thing. But that's just part of walking that out,
Yeah. And don't let other people tell you you're being dumb by doing all of these things. It may seem dumb, but eventually it's going to work out for you.
100%.
All right, Jeff. Well, what other pieces of advice or any last thoughts that you'd like to give to the audience?
I think that I think we do not place nearly as much emphasis as we should anymore on one-to-one connections with people. spending more time with your family, spending more time with your clients, that is actual face-to-face time. With some of those people, I think in the world of technology today, I feel like that's going to become a more precious commodity over the next several years. And maintaining that connection. I think everybody got a taste of what isolation could really feel like with the pandemic. And I feel like that's one of those things that, we need to lean into the opposite of that and realize that we need to connect with people around us, not for any reason of like selling everybody something it needs to be a genuine connection. Yeah. Yes, it needs to be a genuine connection with people. And yes, there are things that you need to do for your business, and you need to make sales, and you need to market your business and all those kind of things. But if you solve problems that genuinely need to be solved, and you genuinely want to help people and make an impact in your community, all of the rest of the sales piece, all of the rest of the marketing piece will eventually take care of itself. There are steps that you're going to have to walk through and things that you're going to have to do. But at the end of the day, the connection that you make with other individuals around you is one of the greatest things that you can do.
I 100% agree with that. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for being on. It was great to have you. Great conversation.
You as well.
Give me some details if somebody wants to work with you, find you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that?
So the best way to find us is on our website. It's casav.com. You can find us there. We're on all of the social media platforms as well. Is LinkedIn, Facebook, all that fun stuff. But yeah, the website's probably the best place right now. And look forward to it. Anybody needs help with audio, video, or IT?
You're in Houston.
We're in Houston, but we do travel.
Okay.
We do a lot of stuff out of state for other clients and things like that. So we're predominantly in Texas and try to stay in Texas when we can, but we do travel. So.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'm sure I will talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.